I dag talte vi nemlig med SandMonkey og startede med at spørge, om han mener, at retssagen mod Mubarak fortsat forløber, som demokratiaktivisterne måtte ønske det.
Well, for example, today the trial ended with the judge deciding that they're not going to televise the trials anymore. I think it's becoming more and more apparent that this whole thing is going to be a political circus and a fiasco. I'm not even sure that this trial is a legit trial. We all truly think that this trial aims just to please public opinion, that he is going to end up on house arrest for 3 years or something. His sons are going to take 3 to 5 years, and he's never going to see a day in jail, and nobody will see a day of justice. So I think that a lot of people's excitement over it are over, and you know.
So what you're saying is, this case, this trial will not take the revolution forward, but how can you be so skeptic at this point?
Well, you know, it's small things. For example, like they have very illogical, they made a very logical move where in the first day they combined the 2 cases of Al-Adli, the Interior Ministry, you know, and people in the Interior Ministry, and Mubarak and his sons. And this was only done in order to ensure that we get this fantastic photo up of Mubarak, his sons, and people in the Interior Ministry in one cage. Immediately, within 10 minutes, that illogical decision, they separate the 2 cases again, you know, and there are 2 different cases now. And from the proceedings and the way that they didn't allow all the all the lawyers to come inside. You know, there was selection in whatever witnesses they would allow to bring. There are lots of doubts basically over like the seriousness of this court, or whether it's just not done in order to appease public opinion. And here is the danger for many people. This revolution was about removing Mubarak and seeing him behind bars, and now we have seen him behind bars, and we hear that the trial is going on, and we're completely going to ignore it from now on. So it's a fantastic distraction, and I'm not sure it's very good for the revolution here. So
you're not at all sure that the Egyptian legal system is sufficiently independent to make this a transparent and fair case, such as has been stated earlier on?
Well, the Egyptian legal system is still operating on the laws that were put in by the tyrant and the tyrants before them. So I really highly doubt it's going to be fair.
So who are turning...
Or that it's going to be independent.
Right. Sorry, but who are turning this whole trial into a show trial? Who are turning it into a political circus, as you call it?
Well, you know, you can accuse the interim government, you can accuse the military council, Supreme Council of Armed Forces. You gotta understand, nobody really wants to see Mubarak tried. Nobody, like in the outside world. I mean, this is a man who has run Egypt for 30 years. You don't run the most geopolitically important country in the world for 30 years and not know where lots of the bodies are buried. You know, when it comes to things regarding Saudi and America and Europe and Iraq and the Iraq-Iran war and all kinds of geopolitical relations they don't want to deal with, even Israel. Like, for example, if the man only talks about the rendition cases, you know, with the US, just that file in this whole black box of 30 years of secrets that man must know, that could bring down at least 3 US administrations. So nobody wants him to talk. But nobody wants to see him.
But Mahmoud Salem,
that's why we're very skeptical about the trial.
Yeah, I can hear that, but he's not standing on trial, you know, for his whole period as president, but mainly, if you want to put it that way, for what is called unlawful killing and corruption in regards to the uprising.
And who picked those charges, basically? You know, who decided this was going to be charged for? If you ask Egyptians, they would like to see him tried for 30 years of, like, you know, corruption, being in power. Not just the unlawful, like, you know, killing of protesters. Because that's a very easy case. He will blame, like, the Interior Minister. The Interior Minister will claim he got orders. You know, they will take in consideration Mubarak's age and health, and then they'll put him under house arrest, like they'll pull pot and whatever. And we're never really going to see any kind of real justice or people held accountable for what they did to the country for 30 years. This is not just about like 850 people that died in the revolution. This is about thousands and thousands who spent years in jail, getting tortured, getting killed. All kinds of, like, you know, sick practices that were under his rule for 30 years. And the only thing that we're actually trying him for is the murder of protesters in this last revolution, which he will claim to be completely, like, you know, done by the Interior Ministry, and that he had nothing to do with it.
Are you also saying then that the current regime headed by General Tantawi are equally responsible for what former President Mubarak is being charged with, and that the whole system, in fact, on the old guard, that they should actually be blamed for this rather than just the former president.
All I'm saying is that the old guard have too many ties with the old president to be completely impartial, to do actually what needs to be done to execute justice. And I think there are too many other considerations that they put, that they consider basically other than just what the demands of the people are when it comes to the ex-president. I think they have different calculations, and they're not sharing those calculations with us. And it's very paternalistic in a way. It's like, hey, you want to see him on trial? Oh, here he is on trial next to Adli and his sons and everybody behind bars. Okay, now you don't see him anymore, and that's it. Thank you.
A new generation of democracy activists have rebelled, famously, you could say, against this paternalistic approach. What do you intend to do now in order to, you could say, bring the revolution back on track?
Well, first of all, there needs to be an understanding that what's happening in Egypt is happening in Tunisia, it's happening everywhere. And it seems to be a revolution of an entire generation, rebelling against a different generation. I don't think this has sunk in with many people in Egypt as it should have, that this is a youth revolution, even though the West very much talks about that. In terms of dealing with them, I think we're going to move towards more of the political process. I would like to see us open as many fronts, on the transitional government as possible, politically, revolutionary, streetwise, civil society-wise. And that's the focus I'm focusing on. I'm focusing on lobbies, I'm focusing on watchdogs, I'm focusing on getting people to vote and monitor the next election, because we have an election coming up, and if we don't pay attention to it, then what's going to happen to us is what happens to every other country that goes through its transitional period fast, which is that the old parliament looks a lot like the new parliament looks a lot like the old parliament, and we don't want that.
Yeah.